The movie is set in 2006 and follows a group of U.S. Army soldiers traveling by helicopter. The group was headed to an outpost called PRT Kamdesh, situated in a remote valley of the Hindu Kush Mountains. This outpost was established by the U.S. Army to promote counterinsurgency efforts. Upon arriving at the outpost, the soldiers are greeted by their fellow comrades. They all settle in and rest for the night. The next morning, the soldiers awoke and began exploring the outpost. They were shocked to discover that their outpost was located at the bottom of the valley, putting them at a strategic disadvantage and making them more vulnerable to terrorist attacks. These terrorists frequently targeted the outpost, determined to drive the soldiers away. While the captain was briefing the soldiers, the terrorists launched an attack. The soldiers defended their base, and after a fierce battle, they managed to secure a victory. However, just after their victory, tensions rose between two soldiers, Gallegos and Younger. During the fight, Younger had fired a shot too close to Gallegos, making Gallegos to push Younger in anger. The other soldiers quickly broke up the fight. At that moment, they realized that one of their comrades, Jacob, had been shot in the face. He was immediately sent for surgery. Later that night, the captain scolded a soldier named Faulkner for using drugs, but decided to give him one more chance to prove himself. Captain Benjamin then gathered all the soldiers and reminded them that they were still at risk of being attacked. He also emphasized that one of the ways they could stay safe was by maintaining good relations with the local people. The next morning, the soldiers, along with Captain Benjamin, went to meet the local people. The soldiers left their weapons behind and went inside. The local people asked Benjamin why the soldiers were staying in the valley. Benjamin explained that their mission was to separate ordinary people from the terrorists, aiming to stop terrorism so the locals could live peacefully. He also offered them compensation to complete their projects in exchange for surrendering their weapons. The head of the local community agreed, and everyone surrendered their weapons. That night, the soldiers were relaxed, believing they were no longer at risk of attack. However, the next morning, the terrorists struck again. Despite the surprise, the soldiers managed to defend themselves. Later, Benjamin led a team of soldiers on a mission to move the LMTV, but the narrow mountain roads made the task very dangerous. During the drive, two soldiers got out to check the road ahead. After inspecting, they signaled to Captain Benjamin that it was safe to proceed. The LMTV fell off the mountain due to the narrow space, and Captain Benjamin died. The following morning, all the soldiers held a military funeral for him. Soon after, their new captain arrived at the outpost. Sergeant Romesha briefed Captain Ilescas about the situation. He showed the mortars, the only weapons capable of reaching the ridgelines to attack the terrorists. Suddenly, a massive gunfire broke out. The soldiers managed to handle it and defend themselves. They then investigated the site from where the attack originated. The site had a clear view of their outpost. Later, during training, one of the soldiers spotted an Afghan man secretly taking pictures of their outpost. The soldiers captured and tied him up. Captain Ilescas met with the local people, informing them about the person they had caught. He assured them that the man would be released within 2 to 3 days if proven innocent. The local people objected, accusing the soldiers of betrayal and claiming they never received the promised money. Ilescas promised they would receive the money as soon as the real culprit was found. After the meeting, one of the Afghan soldiers warned the U.S. soldiers that the local people were unhappy and would attack again. However, the U.S. soldiers believed they could handle it as they had done before. Later, they embarked on their mission with Captain Ilescas and Soldier Younger crossing a wooden bridge. Midway across the bridge, a huge explosion occurred. This explosion killed Captain Ilescas, but left Younger alive. That night, Younger was haunted by the incident. Feeling unfit to be a soldier, he attempted suicide. However, Sergeant Romesha heard him mumbling and intervened. He removed the ammunition from Younger's gun. Younger was then sent to the aid station. Their new captain arrived shortly after. Captain Broward informed them that their mission would be ending on July 6th. The next day began with the investigation into Captain Ilescas's death. The soldiers found an Afghan voter ID card and gave it to Broward. An Afghan army soldier told them the man on the ID card worked at a hydroelectric plant. They will catch him if they leave immediately. However, Captain Broward refused, insisting they wait wait for the appointed investigation officer to arrive. The soldiers objected as the suspect would escape by that time, but Broward remained firm in his decision. As the soldiers resumed their duties, they were attacked again by terrorists. The unit defended themselves, and Sergeant Romesha ordered the use of mortars. They successfully repelled the attack, but afterward, Captain Broward scolded Romesha for using mortars and wasting ammunition. He also informed the soldiers that no action should be taken without his orders. He also mentioned that the closure of the outpost in July had been canceled. Later that night, the terrorists attacked the outpost with mortars. Captain Broward realized that the terrorists now had night vision capabilities. A few minutes later, the attack stopped. The next morning, some local people came and accused the soldiers of killing their daughter. They demanded financial compensation. One of the soldiers noticed that the girl's body was at least 2 to 3 days old, indicating that the Taliban had killed her. He informed the captain about this. Suddenly, one of the army dogs attacked a local man, causing the locals to panic. Captain Broward shot the dog, but the locals said that being bitten by a dog was extremely shameful in their culture. To settle the dispute, the captain offered them a generous compensation. Later, all the soldiers were gathered in a room when Captain Broward arrived. He informed them that he was being withdrawn from the mission and that a new captain would arrive in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, Lieutenant Andrew was left in charge. A few peaceful days passed, and then the critical day arrived. It was October 3rd, 2009, around 5:50 a.m., when an Afghan soldier ran in yelling that hundreds of Taliban were coming and that the villagers had left. One of the soldiers, using binoculars, saw hundreds of men approaching from all directions. Just then, gunfire broke out. The soldiers engaged in a fierce battle to defend themselves. Those inside the post ran to join the counterattack, but they were surrounded by gunfire and blasts. One area in the outpost ran out of ammo and requested supplies. Some soldiers nearby the ammo storage unit picked up ammunition. Soldier Scusa attempted to deliver it to Soldier Gallegos, but was shot and killed. Then Soldier Carter took the ammunition and managed to get it to Gallegos, but their machine gun broke down, making the ammo useless. Sergeant Romesha tried to cover Gallegos and the other soldiers by firing his machine gun to the south, but he was hit by an RPG. His arm got cut and he was bleeding. Some other soldiers tried to rescue Gallegos and his team trapped inside the vehicle, but the terrorists breached the outpost and killed them. Sergeant Romesha received a radio message about another breach from a different side. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Andrew was trying to secure air support to repel the terrorists. After the breach, he ordered the soldiers to fall back to the core positions. However, Sergeant Romesha entered the control room and insisted they needed to reclaim the camp. He proposed a plan to secure the ammo depot and the entrance of the outpost, which Lieutenant Andrew approved. Gallegos and the other soldiers decided to escape using a vehicle, taking cover behind the rocks. During the execution of this plan, they were all shot at, and only 2 soldiers survived, one of them being Carter. Sergeant Romesha took some soldiers to secure the front entrance, moving under the cover of machine gun fire. Lieutenant Andrew informed Romesha via radio that support would arrive in a few minutes. Romesha saw the terrorists entering the outpost and decided to advance, despite the risks. Upon reaching the entrance, he saw a large number of terrorists, but just then, fighter helicopters arrived and eliminated the enemy. Meanwhile, Carter in the vehicle noticed Soldier Mace was alive and crawling towards them. He yelled at Mace to take cover behind the rocks and asked another soldier to cover him while he brought Mace back to the vehicle. Carter managed to bring Mace back, but Mace was bleeding out and needed immediate care. Lieutenant Andrew informed Carter that helicopters would strike the south side of the outpost in 30 seconds, giving them a chance to bring Mace to the medics. Carter and the other soldier used this opportunity to carry Mace to the medics. Mace was bleeding out and needed immediate care. One of the soldiers donated blood to Mace in an attempt to save his life. With the help of the helicopters, the soldiers managed to secure a victory. The fight ended around 6 p.m. The remaining terrorists retreated. The soldiers helped their injured comrades and tried to save them. They assessed their losses. After the battle, they were boarded onto helicopters to return to their country. During the flight, news came that Mace didn't make it, devastating Carter. Back home, Sergeant Romesha calls his family, who he has been avoiding for a long time, whereas Carter was ordered to attend therapy, where he broke down due to Mace's death. This battle is now famously known as the Battle of Kamdesh. It resulted in the unit becoming the most decorated in the Afghanistan wars. This battle was the first in 50 years in which a Medal of Honor was given to 2 living servicemen, and the movie also ends here. Please like the video and subscribe the Explanation Pro for more contents like this.